Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Russell here, and the leaders of the main political parties here in Canada, the NDP, the Conservatives, and the Liberals, have taken to the roads in somewhat of an election-style road trip to Western Canada, especially given the fact that many experts believe that we could be seeing an election here at the end of August or the beginning of September. And they're holding tons of press conferences, and they're all talking about one thing more than the other. And this makes sense based off of some new data that was just released today that says no longer is COVID the number one thing on Canadians' minds when it comes to a potential election. No, instead the economy has taken its place as the top issue for Canadians ahead of this potential election. And it gets interesting here when we take a look at the stats, saying that around 28%, over a quarter of the people who responded in this survey, said that the economy was their top concern, and COVID has sort of fallen down all the way to 16%. But they're not just focused on the economy in general, they're focused on one aspect of it, one of the largest aspects of the Canadian economy here, and that is the current housing situation, which has a lot of people a little bit concerned. Let me show you what Justin Trudeau just said about housing, sort of giving himself and the Liberals a pat on the back for the work they've been doing. Take a look at this.
This pandemic has laid bare gaps and inequalities in our society that we must continue to address. That includes the fact that far too many people do not have a roof over their head. And that's why we're here this afternoon. Because we know that building a safer, more resilient Canada starts by making sure that everyone has a safe place to call home. When we launched the Rapid Housing Initiative last year, we projected it would create up to 3,000 affordable housing units right across the country. Well, in March, we exceeded expectations. That number became over 4,700 new units. Well, today, we're reaching even higher. We're investing an additional $1.5 billion in the Rapid Housing Initiative for a total of over 9,200 new homes for Canadians who need it most. That means thousands of people with a safe place to stay, thousands of people for whom life will get brighter. We're doing what it takes to make sure that everyone gets a roof over their head.
While 9,200 affordable housing units will have a big impact, especially for some of the most at-risk Canadians in need of shelter, it doesn't really do too much for the Canadians who are struggling right now, hoping to own a home one day and feeling like that goal is getting farther and farther out of reach. And it seems like Jagmeet Singh and the NDP have noticed that this is a pain point and they're pressing it hard. Let me show you what he said today at a press conference, and then I'm going to show you the Twitter thread where he even more harshly calls out Trudeau's for some pretty big failures, at least in the NDP's eyes. And then, of course, if he's criticizing, he has to have a plan of his own, so we're going to go over that too. But before we do, if you haven't already done so, make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to keep on supporting Canadian content like this. And if you've been watching any of my videos, you'll know that I think it's so important that Canadians start investing. So check out the links in the description where you can open up your own investing accounts. Thanks so much for doing that. Now let's take a look at what Jagmeet has to say.
Reality is, under 6 years of Justin Trudeau being in government, things have gotten worse. We've seen the rate of increase of housing prices increase the highest in all developed nations here in Canada. That means the worst track record of housing prices increasing has happened under the 6 years of Justin Trudeau being in government. That is wrong. We are committed to solutions, and some of the solutions are tackling the pressures that are driving up the cost of housing. So stopping the speculation where Canadians are having to compete with foreign investors to buy a home. We need a foreign investment tax federally. We also know that house flipping is driving up the cost of housing. We've got to stop that as well. We've got to stop those pressures that are driving up the cost of housing. And we also have to build more homes that people can afford, homes that are in people's budgets, whether it's to rent or to own. We need more homes. And that's why we're committed to building 500,000 or 500,000 new homes that people can afford. This will make a big difference here in Cowichan Valley, on the island, and across Canada. It'll create jobs, it'll be a job stimulus, but also build homes that people can actually afford. We need to get serious about this. In the past, we have. After the World Wars, Canada made a decision to build homes, and we built hundreds and thousands of homes that people could actually afford. We need to do that again. That's our commitment to you.
So some pretty large criticisms as well as some pretty big plans, but we're going to break those down in just a minute. But let me show you this Twitter thread where Jagmeet Singh calls him out even further, and then he details his plan in a little bit more detail here. Take a look at this. He says the housing crisis is devastating Canadians across the country, and Justin Trudeau says he recognizes the crisis, but he acts as if there isn't one. Since coming to power, he has prioritized protecting the ultra-rich while Canadian families struggle. So are obviously some harsh words from the NDP. But they actually call him out even further and get more specific. He went to Twitter essentially right after this press conference and actually outlined these points that he was saying in that press conference, saying Canada's house price to income ratio is the highest in the world. Now that's an interesting statement. Essentially that's of course a ratio that measures how much people make versus what the house prices are in that country. And I have some data for you that I want to show because this statement isn't entirely true. This is a really cool website that shows a whole bunch of different real estate data across the different countries, and this is the chart for the price to income ratio, right? Jagmeet Singh here is saying that Canada is the worst in the world, but that's definitely not the case. We'll scroll and we'll scroll and we'll scroll and we'll scroll, and I think we get all the way to 98 before we get to Canada in terms of the home prices to income ratio. So obviously there are a lot of other countries that are a lot worse, but I believe that he sort of makes up for this tweet by saying later that he just meant the developed countries, of which Canada isn't doing so hot. He also brings up the fact that many families are spending 41% of their income on housing, and if we look at the same chart that we were just looking at, it actually has data that actually is a little bit even more grim, saying that in Canada, mortgage as a percentage of income is 49.62% of the average Canadian's income. Now, this has a huge impact on building your wealth in Canada, and this is something we talk a lot about in the Canada Money Mastery program down there in the description, 40% off with coupon code GROW. But we talk about how when you're spending so much on your housing, you don't actually have the ability to save and invest the way you need to in order to build wealth here in Canada, unless you buy your home in a very specific way that we talk about in more depth there. But it obviously is a very big problem because everyone's money is just going into their rent or their mortgage instead of being able to actually build a solid financial ground. And then he says Canadian housing prices have risen the most across the globe. Again, a little bit of a stretch of the truth, and that's not entirely true across the entire globe, but among developed countries, let me show you this data. It does get a little bit interesting here, and I'll zoom in. You'll notice Canada is the red line on this chart, far surpassing all of the other G7 countries. They sort of do this with an index, right? So as of, I think it was 2005 right here, they sort of took the price of houses across all of these countries in 2005, and then they've measured the rate in which they've grown since then by setting that as 100, and Canada obviously is the only one that's gotten anywhere close to doubling since 2005. The same article actually points out that Japan is the only market that actually saw real estate prices decline, so across the G7 we see rising real estate prices across the board, and I think that's largely due to something called quantitative easing, what the central banks are doing to provide very low interest rates by pumping the economy full of new money, but that sounds like a topic for a different video. But of course, if Jagmeet Singh and the NDP are going to call out Justin Trudeau so heavily, well, they better have a plan themselves to back it up on how they would do things better, and that's what Jagmeet Singh says that he has here today. Let's take a look at that. He says that his plan is to invest in building 500,000 homes across Canada, implement a 20% tax for all foreign buyers, and tackle money laundering that increase real estate speculation. So a little bit interesting. I think in the clip that I showed you earlier, he talked about house flippers, but it seems like that's not really included in this sort of 3-point plan. I'm just noticing here, look at this. It seems like Twitter at least agrees with Jagmeet Singh. You know that on the channel I like to stay right down the middle here, but that's a funny coincidence. Now, I think some of these things could have an impact on the housing market, making it potentially more accessible for Canadians to get access to. But of course, as I always like to say here on the channel, the devil is in the details. And just saying investing in building 500,000 homes across Canada and how they're going to implement this tax and how are they going to tackle money laundering. We need more details before we can actually judge any given plan than just the headline points. You know, like on this channel, I like to go as deep as possible so you can understand what's actually going on here. But unfortunately, when we take a closer look and we click on this link where you would hope to get a little bit more information on what they plan to do, well, it seems like it's just a landing page for the NDP to get your information to be on their mailing list. Take a look at this. They just say the housing crisis is out of control. We're fighting to make sure everyone has a safe and affordable place to call home. Add your name to this list so that you can show your support that you actually want something to be done about this. And this is one of the frustrating things because we don't see the details behind what a plan like this would actually look like, and he doesn't really outline the potential struggles and challenges you could have trying to build 500,000 homes in Canada. If they were able to pull it off and actually build 500,000 units of housing, well, it would have a large impact here in Canada, but there's a lot of problems because this isn't just a federal jurisdiction problem. They've also got to coordinate with the provinces and the individual towns and municipalities, not to mention people in the neighborhoods where they want to intensify and build more units, having a NIMBYism, if you've ever heard of that, not in my backyard, saying, hey, we don't want increased amounts of population in our town. We don't want more building to happen here. So there's all kinds of struggles that aren't really addressed here with just like a 3-point Twitter plan. And although Aaron O'Toole, the leader of the Conservatives, hasn't had many press conferences lately where he's really talked about housing, I do have to show this because I like to, again, stay right down the middle. This is the Conservatives' plan for how they're planning on recovering Canada post-pandemic. And when we click economy, where we would likely see something about real estate, well, you get to this page where there's a couple more points about the economy, if my computer will load here. And but unfortunately, there's no information on exactly what the Conservative platform would be going forward about housing. But I'm really curious about what you think about all of this. Now, it's something that I think about all the time because my full-time job is as a realtor in the Greater Toronto area, which, by the way, if you want to chat real estate or talk about buying or selling in that area, you can hop into the Discord linked down there in the description. But let me know down in the comments, what do you think about all of this? Do you like the ideas in Jagmeet Singh's plan, or do you think that the Liberals are doing a good job handling it, or do you think an entirely new solution would actually be the best bet for Canada? There's certainly no silver bullet for a problem like this, but let me know what you think down there in the comments. And while you're down there, make sure you check out all those links in the description where you can either open up investing accounts or learn more about investing and building wealth in Canada with coupon code GROW. That's 40% off of the Canada Money Mastery Program. Check it out. I'd love to see you in there. But with all of that said, thanks so much for watching, everybody. I really hope this video has helped you out at least a little bit, and I'll see you next time.